Wow. So the bar is really high over here. Um, I'll do my best. And yeah, let's get started. Um, so I'm here to talk to you about the future of SolidStart, how we are with 1.0 with a package called Vite, and what we're doing with our Vite integrations and beyond. So this talk is kind of like the talk version of this little roadmap, which we decided to make it more transparent and as a GitHub discussion. So please, after this talk, if you're interested, go there, give us this little some feedback and voice your comments. Also, yeah, I forgot to mention this particular text, also because we wanted so much to have opinions and people listening. I also did one of the most stupid things I ever did in public, which was a very cheeky video that's basically just telling what our plans and how we got to this point. So yeah, this is my great. And then once we're done with the talk, please hop in there and let me know your thoughts. There's also another thread. We're trying to do this, try to do this kind of announcements very transparent and with a certain cadence. So there are more things we're going to mention in this talk that are in a separate one. So please go check the SolidStart discussions. But yeah, about me. So I'm a part-time open source developer. I have a full-time job. I work at Neon, the serverless Postgres. Luckily, they also encourage me to do a lot of open source. So, but those are not the topics of this one. I'm here to talk to you about what we're doing in Solid, and more specifically, what we're doing in SolidStart. I'm also a GDE for web technologies, and I have a bunch of easy shortcuts for you. If for some reason you want to chat with me, you want to hop on, it's Atila.io. And if you slash any social media there, you're going to land. The ones that are most often at are Blue Sky and YouTube. Anyways, so what is SolidStart? Yeah, I think by now most of you know it's the full stack framework from the Solid ecosystem, but why we built it and what is the motivation behind it? Why does it exist? So a lot of the motivation from this came from a lot of thoughts from Ryan Carniaro. He gave a very good talk. It's called Front-End's Existential Crisis. Not at all dramatic, very good one, and where he points out, like in a very broad strokes summary, he points out the spectrum that we have today on web applications. So we have this little thing on this graph, I'd say, that on one end you have single page applications, they're like these apps, kind of dashboards, and on the other end you have the marketing pages, like landing pages and stuff like that. But things are not like black and white like this. There is a big transition point where apps go more and more static with like stateful kind of apps that are like social media, like Facebook and whatever. From the other end, you have the news websites that they are mostly static, but they have a lot of dynamic content. And then right in the middle, you have the e-commerce, where you basically have a few like single page applications inside a multi-page app, which is very hard to do and so on. And the point that Ryan was making in this post and that we agree with is that what we actually want is the performance benefits of a multi-page app. So smaller bundle size and being able to like preload resources and so on. But we want the user experience of a single page app. This is not entirely a new concept. In 2022, Rich Harris, who was here giving a talk yesterday, he made a talk at ViteConf, where he coined a term, or he tried to coin the transitional apps, which essentially, like in a nutshell, they reached for something like this. And it's pretty much what all full stack frameworks are going for. And the reason for that is that the web is a fetch fest. Like every time you open a website, you have multiple components rendering data. Sometimes they don't depend on each other, sometimes they do. And then you have to deal with like concurrent requests, you have to deal with chain reactions and so on. So it is really hard to orchestrate all that. And those are like the simpler ones. You can go further, and then you can have chat applications with streaming, which are the new rage right now. And then you go, as I mentioned, you go to like an e-commerce, and then you have a static one, but then there's the little chat application over there asking you for support or whatever, or there's a little chat bot that's going to tell you what's your shoe size. And then you also have a bunch of like dynamic stuff because they're targeting all the way. So they're going to show you stuff that they think you want or they think you might buy. And then you have another thing that's like some advertisement that they sold to someone. And then there's also a video there because why not? And then afterwards, there's in the end, there is the shopping cart, which is why you're there in the end. And then after all that, and then the developers there did their best to make this as streamlined as possible. There was Google Tag Manager as well. So it's very, it's a bit overwhelming. And so to do this kind of stuff that all of us need to do, we need frameworks because they abstract all the complexity, as Puya mentioned before. Like there's a lot of complexity into building something like that, and that's all hidden in the frameworks. And so SolidStart has a bunch of a few fundamental ideas where we built the framework SolidStart and the router, which are concurrent requests, a very strong serialization, a modular approach, and built with existing technology. We are a small team and we love open source, so we need to be able to stand in the shoulders of giants like, I don't know, Vite, for example, as we're all here. And the biggest part of this is the concurrent requests and the strong serialization. Those are actually core parts of our framework. So we built, one member of our core team built our own serializer called Ceroval, and it actually deduplicate. Thanks. Yeah, it's awesome. Ceroval is awesome. It does like deduplication on the requests coming out, but also does referential checks on the data that's coming down the wire. So we deduplicate things twice. It has support for async iterators. You can stream stuff. It's really good. So that's one of the foundational pieces that we have in Start. Going forward, that like a lot of these things are about like fetching the data so far. I've been talking about bringing the data in. Let's talk about writes now. Let's talk about post requests, mutations. How do you do that in the server today? And that's the one demo I'll have for you. It's about something we were able to build with thanks to Ceroval and thanks to what our resource asset management in Start. So let's say you're doing like a regular login. Everybody wrote a login, right? So you fill the user fills their credentials, password, username, send it to the backend. The backend gets a post request, replies, okay, you can go in. You should redirect now, and then the client side redirects and gets the data for the logged in page. And then the data for the new URL, the dashboard, whatever else is, arrives. Everybody cool with that? Familiar? We've seen that before, right? What SolidStart does is something called single flight mutations, which is one of the features that I'm most excited about because it leverages the whole part that if your framework knows about the backend and the client side knows about the backend and the backend knows about the client, we can actually skip one of these round trips because the framework knows where the user is going by the time they reply to the first one. So what we do in this case is we say the user sends their credentials and the framework then throws a redirect and already sends the data for the new one. So then the route change actually happens on the client side and you don't need to fetch data anymore. And that's the demo that I have for you folks here today, which is not this. No, yeah, it's this actually. And so what we have here is like, I know it's JSX. It's very familiar with some other framework you guys have might seen before. But this is Solid, and it's pretty familiar. Like you see here, there's suspense. It's something you already done before. We have this for. You could use the dot map, but what we do with the for is just like some good memoization and optimization. And then we have this create async, which is basically going to transform the asynchronous data into a signal, which is a synchronous data. And then the magic happens on this, like because we're exporting the routes, we are telling it what we want it to preload. So, and then because of that, when start is running, it's going to be able to see what data is required for this, and then it's going to see, oh, my Pokemons are required for this, and so on. So, yeah. Oh, right now I'm actually on the hotspot, and this is another cool thing that, yeah, sorry. I think it's cool. So this is actually going to, let's see if it works. I have a little SQL which is going to put a few Pokemons on Postgres when I run my dev server, because thanks to Vite, I can have like a Postgres plugin, and then I can just say, okay, seed my data. And so let's see if my hotspot is working fast enough. Okay, so now I have my .env here, should be working, and it's an ephemeral database. Don't worry, I doxed myself, I know, yeah. So, so now we have this app, which I can actually extend the list of Pokemons and make more of them. So this is a traditional experience, as we've seen. Let's have a look, pop up the network tab, and can everybody see the network tab? Should it? Yeah. Oh, okay. So now we're going to add our Vitmon, and Vitmon should be should look like a Haichu, right? Because lightning and stuff, right? So now I'm going to add it, and you see I did the single one. Yeah, that was not smart. So the Vitmon, I'm now going to have to call something else. And then let's do Bulbasaur this time. So now I have my post request, which is going to put the data, insert the data in my database. And then once the redirect through comes in, then I fetch all the other data, right? So because this one, the server doesn't know about the data in the client, it needs to do the 2 requests. And now, if I go to the single one, which is single flight, I'm going to do the Vite Plus. And I like Charizard. So now, when you do the single flight, you have one only request, and you can see in the response that you have the 2 RPCs that are bundled together. So what happens is the server posts the data, and when it's going to throw the redirect, it already knows where you're going, so then it fetches again. Maybe it's cached, maybe it's not, and then it puts there on these references. It looks like this because of all the strong caching that Servo is doing, but essentially, that's what single flight requests are. So you can save a bunch of round trips with mutation with this feature. Yep, let's move on. Yeah, by the way, the demo is open source. You can go and poke it up on my GitHub. And so today, this is what SolidStart 1.0 works. So we have the bundler in the server. This predates the environment API that we saw on James's talk that Puya mentioned. So before that, we needed to have 2 different Vite configurations. So a core member in Solid created Vinci, which orchestrates that, does the server functions code extraction, does the file system router, and handles the assets manifests. We have Cereval, which is our serializer. And then we have the solid router in this case, and that would do the client-side navigation, and finally solid as the UI library. So 1.0 looks like this. So what we get out of Vinci is the node runtime because it wraps Nitro, the code extraction, and the CSS handling. So the node runtime comes from Nitro and H3 that Puya mentioned before. And then what happens is you get your source code. Vinci then is going to receive the configuration you have. So we're going to abstract your Vite configuration. And then it's actually going to do two things. One of them, prepare the client-side code, and the other, prepare the backend code with Nitro and the primitives that we have in SolidStart. And then 2025 came along. And then from Vite 5 with Vinci, we are moving to then Vite 6 with the environments API, because that's going to allow us to leverage the expose to all the users, the Vite configuration, so you can plug and play. And then I think SolidStart comes closer to fulfill the idea of being a meta framework, something that's very lean on the core and that you can extend, but I'll talk about that later. So what happens now is that the source code is entirely orchestrated with Vite, and then SolidStart is a plugin, Nitro is a plugin, and then it outputs a solid app. In the end, what happens today is the bundle and the server are going to be orchestrated by Vite. SolidStart is going to bring the manifests, is going to bring the file system router, and it's going to bring Cereval as a serializer. We are using the great server function plugin that 10stack uses, which is the same as 10stack start. And we're going to then leverage Nitro as the recommended backend approach. But since we're going to surface that as a plugin, you can also plug and play as much as you want. The rest the same. It's also going to support 10stack router and the UI library. So as I mentioned, to summarize, this is what's happening now. Then we're removing Vinci and replacing that with solutions that already exist in the community. And now it's the hard part. I'm so relieved that Daniel, thanks for not releasing Nux 4.2, because I'm also not releasing anything today. SolidStart 2 Alpha is going to come out once we reach feature parity between the 2.0 and the 1.0, then the current version. Then we will update Nitro from V2 to V3, and we're going to add support for Solid 2.0, which I'm going to talk in a minute. Finally, no release is done without fixes and improvements. So that's when we reach the stable version. And the way it's looking so far in our development branch is like this. Just like Puya mentioned, and it looks beautiful. So you have Start as a plugin, you have Nitro as a plugin, and that's your Vite config. And that's what you need to have a SolidStart app going on. Okay, that's what we're working on right now. But then what, right? Have anybody familiar with the framework development traffic light? Of course you're not. Nobody ever mentioned about that. I'm saying for the first time. So we have UX, which should be a blocker for development, for releasing stuff. So if your framework is not allowing your developers to ship great UX, you have a problem, you have a bug, you have something that would block that release. Then it's also like important to have some DX, like UX is still more important in my humble opinion, but you should have a great DX to facilitate that UX as far as possible. And now, as we saw on Matt's talk yesterday, there is this new AX thing, which happens to be important because a lot of people are Vite coding, and a lot of people are doing code assisted by AIs. and it's really important that your framework is intelligible to those AIs. Sometimes it doesn't mean the same as being intelligible to developers. And we are pairing with, we paired with the Angular team about some very cool tool that they're doing about improving this thing. Jessica is going to talk all about it, so I'm not mentioning anything further. You need to watch her talk later today, but it's really good. And we're working on that as well to make sure that SolidStart 2.0, we are going to help all your Vite coding shenanigans. And going forward, as I mentioned before, SolidStart is intended to be a true meta framework where you can pick apart the pieces. You can, like, it should not have any opinions. And as a counter side of that, we are very lean, which means almost bare. Like, we don't have a few alternatives for you. Like, we don't have an image component. We don't have a clear, like, one drop thing to have a nice CSP or something like that in our core. And the way we're going about it is introducing something that we are calling like our full stack primitives. And so there are a few that are already under development. One of them is the image component. And so ideally, this is what's looking like it right now. So you can add an additional Vite plugin to configure that, and this is built on top of a community plugin called Imitari, which is a new thing that one of our core members created. And that will then allow you to then plug it in if you want to use, or leave it out if you don't need. And so you can define the quality and so on as you would expect from any image component. And now, these are the ones that we are already listed that we want to do. So these are the things that a lot of our developers have been asking for. And all of them are intended to be like as thin wrappers as possible, to be able to not bring you too many opinions, just the ones you need to get your stuff working. And then I mentioned SolidStart 2.0. Who here has followed like development on SolidStart 2.0? Okay, so maybe for you guys, I don't have much news, but Solid 2.0 is all about new async primitives. So we are going to have a lot of new things like create projection, create optimistic. We're going to have a really nice transition helper, and we're going to go much more granular on handling your effects. And with that, we are going to then, as soon as and Solid 2.0 is not out the door yet, but it is coming close to that. And there's a lot more things behind this release. I totally suggest, if you're interested in that, check Ryan's live streams. He's always talking about it and sharing stuff. You can join us, get involved in the Discord, and we're happy to talk to you about it. But yes, Solid 2.0 is coming, and SolidStart is not shipping without it. But ultimately, with all that, what we're all trying to say is that you should always bet on Vite. Like, it enables us to do so much cool stuff. And yeah, this community is awesome. And yeah. And if you want to get involved with Solid, if anything that I said resonated with you in any way and you want to get involved, with SolidStart specifically, you can join SolidStart. You can add an issue. If you have an idea or feedback, you can start a discussion. And if you're not sure how to use it, how to ship, how to file a bug or something like that, we also accept pull requests. Like, if you want to add like a failing test or something, you don't know how to fix, but you found a bug. We have like a test suite. I'm very happy to help you in like writing a failing test, and we can put that as a PR, as a failing test, and we'll help you work through the solutions. Other than that, if you're interested in all the development we're doing, we have also the Discord. Join there. Discord GG, SolidJS. Just drop in, and yeah, start chatting. Everybody is always super excited of hearing new opinions. And to get started with Solid is as easy as this. And we're going to have a nice prompt where it's going to be asked if you're going to use SolidStart or not. And then you can start building. And with that, I am able to then allow you to take a few more minutes, and you can go a little bit early to your lunch. So that was all I had for you. You can, my QR code is not as fancy as Daniel's. It just takes you to my website, so you can see what I'm up to. If you want it for some reason, you can find me in Blue Sky preferentially. Oh my God! If you, it's best in Blue Sky, but you can also go on the other side. I don't know what happened, but you can find me also on the other social medias. And that was it. Thank you very much.